Welcome to the Daily Insider right here on VegasInsider.com. Kevin Rogers with you. Friday, September 3rd, 2021, week one of college football is underway. And obviously, we have a lot to go over here on this edition of the Daily Insider. And we bring on, we're going to call him now a friend of the program because he joined us last week to talk college football, and it's Kyle Hunter who is with us today. And Kyle, good to talk to you. I know you have a lot of thoughts on this college football card, but first, let's begin with last night. The Ohio State Buckeyes, they beat Minnesota 45-31. They were down early. They showed they're just better than Minnesota. But what was your takeaway from that win last night by the Buckeyes?
Yeah, so obviously I watched every bit of that game. The Buckeyes are my team. I can't decide after watching that game if I'm more optimistic or pessimistic about Ohio State. That was kind of a weird game, right? We had these different runs by both teams. Ohio State was running the football extremely well. Stroud was not very good in the first half and then good in the second half. The Ohio State defense to me still looks like a weakness. This is a team in Ohio State that I would rather bet overs with than unders, that's for sure, going forward, because I don't think we can trust that defense to come up with stops consistently. But I think this offense is going to be very good, tough to stop as long as Stroud plays pretty well. The big takeaway for me, Minnesota, Ibrahim getting injured. I think that was a pretty serious injury. I haven't seen a status update today, but it looks to me like he will be out for quite a while. That's a pretty big hit to Minnesota, the best player on their team. He was very successful there last night. I think Minnesota is a team that they put a lot into that game. We'll see how they come out these next couple games, but I think that was a tough way to lose for them.
And for Ohio State, they got Oregon next. So obviously, it doesn't stop for Ryan Day and the Buckeyes. And any quick thoughts on that? Obviously, we got to see Oregon play first, but pretty big game going to Columbus next week.
Yeah, I'd be hesitant about laying points with Ohio State in a game like that. I think there's still enough questions about this young Ohio State team that I wouldn't want to be laying very many points, and they will clearly be favored by quite a bit. So I would want to stay away from laying the points with Ohio State. I don't know that I'll want to take Oregon, and I try to keep myself away from Ohio State games more often than not, just because I don't want to have any kind of different rooting interest unless I really think there's a strong opinion there. But like I said, I would consider betting some overs here with Ohio State. I still think that if they're going to play with tempo like they did at least part of the night last night, I think this team could have some really high scoring games. I'm looking forward to seeing Oregon too, because Oregon's a very talented team. I don't think Oregon's been really consistent under Cristobal. So I want to see what they do. And honestly, Fresno State's a pretty decent team as well. So it'll be interesting to see how that game goes.
Now, Ohio State, we know they lost to Alabama last year in the national championship. I don't have to remind you, Kyle, but let's transition into Alabama and Miami tomorrow in Atlanta at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. And that number has just skyrocketed. It's almost at 20. And look, we know what Nick Saban can do. We know they reload. They lost everyone on offense, but it's like it doesn't matter because they're going to bring another class this year that's going to be fantastic. And Bryce Young's the quarterback now, replacing Mac Jones. And you just got to wonder here with Alabama, do you lay that heavy lumber with them? Saban's been great in openers. Manny Diaz is a big opportunity for Miami now with Derek King back under center. They say he's fine after the ACL tear in the bowl game last year. But your thoughts on this game in Atlanta tomorrow?
Yeah, so this game is one that I really want to watch. I'm hesitant to bet anything on this game. I will say that I think that Bama deserves to be a favorite. This number is getting awfully big. 73% of the bets are on Bama. It's not surprising to me that the public will want to bet Alabama, so maybe this number even gets even bigger. I don't think I would jump to bet it right now if you like Miami, because I don't see much coming back on Miami unless we get to a bigger number here. So I think, the question is with Alabama, what do we think of Bryce Young as he steps in? Because, he has plenty of talent around him. Obviously, there's not, Devontae Smith and Waddle and guys like that, Harris, but Alabama has plenty of talent. So he's in a good situation. He has a great offensive line in front of him. I'm kind of mixed on Miami as well myself. We've seen a lot of these notes about how the offense has been dominant in their practices. De'Aaron King has looked amazing, but that also worries me about Miami's defense because, they're going to be playing such a talented offense here. I'm not sure Miami can get enough stops in a game like this to be highly competitive, but the point spread is such a large number here. I guess if I had to bet this game, I might lean to the over here. But I'll be honest, this is a game that I won't be betting this weekend. This is one that I just want to watch.
Yeah, and with Alabama, I mean, you definitely got to see what they have, and we know how talented they are and how different a team they'll probably be in October and November as opposed to the opener. But again, we're assuming that these guys are going to be great when we still haven't seen them play yet, and they're still playing. A Miami team that, yes, they've underachieved over the years, but this still is going to be a different experience for Bryce Young, who's going to his first game of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is kind of one of those spots where we can pick our spots, and I don't know that this is the best one. We got plenty of games this weekend. I think this is a pretty good one to just wait and see, and then maybe we learn something to where we're able to find some value on one of these teams the next week.
Now, another SEC ACC matchup, Kyle. Georgia and Clemson, they meet in Charlotte coming up tomorrow night. Obviously, that's going to be a huge game for playoff considerations later on in the season. Clemson, they can stub their toe and probably still be okay. Georgia, not exactly in that spot. I don't want to call it must win for Georgia. They win this game, they'll be in excellent shape. They lose, they probably have some work to do. But Clemson, now no Trevor Lawrence. They're laying a field goal against Kirby Smart's Bulldogs.
Yeah, I was going to say kind of what you were saying there is I think that Clemson can afford to lose this game, and they have such an easy schedule the rest of the way that I think it'd be pretty easy for them to get back in the playoff picture, even with a loss here. I think this game might be more important to Georgia because Georgia has such a tough schedule and they're in a different conference, which is much more difficult, obviously. It's going to be hard for Georgia to get into the playoffs if they lose this game. It's definitely going to be an uphill battle. It's not that they couldn't. They'll have chances because of the teams they play. But I guess the question is, how high is JT Daniels' upside? We know that JT Daniels is better than Stetson Bennett. I mean, I think for a long time, Georgia went far too long last year with Stetson Bennett, who was a nice story, but we saw him in that Bama game and in a couple of the other big games make too many mistakes. You just can't not take care of the football better than what he was doing and try to beat a really good team. I think JT Daniels is a good quarterback. I don't know that he's a great quarterback. Clemson on the other side with DJ Uyunglele, I believe. I'm sorry if I butchered his name. I have to say, that's one of the tougher ones. So I think that Clemson will be extremely good on offense, but we know that they lost ETN. They have Justin Ross back there at wide receiver. I think the key here is, can Clemson pass on, a Georgia team that their secondary is clearly weaker than their front seven. This is a Georgia front seven that is not going to give up rushing yards to hardly anybody. I don't think anybody has a better run defense in the country than Georgia. So I don't think Clemson will have much success running, but can they go through the air here? DJ showed enough last year that I think he's going to be solid there. If I had to bet this game, I would bet Clemson -3. The total, I'm a big totals guy, so the total is one where I put the number almost exactly where it's at right now through my projections. And, I wanted to take the under in this game just because in big games like this, I tend to lean toward taking unders. But I'm just afraid that Clemson will be able to throw the ball enough here. And Clemson defensively is not amazing. I think they're a solid defense, but they're not a complete shutdown unit. So I think this will be a back and forth game. I lean toward taking Clemson in this one. I think the total is just about right.
Let's look at the next game, Kyle. Another SEC team involved, LSU. They're going out to UCLA, and obviously the Tigers got to deal with the stuff at home with Hurricane Ida. So they got displaced earlier in the week, and now they're out in LA to take on the Bruins, who already have one game under their belts. Chip Kelly finally won an opener. I mean, it took him 4 years, but finally won an opener at UCLA. Granted, it was against Hawaii, but now obviously you're stepping up in class against LSU. But Max Johnson will get the start at quarterback. Miles Brennan is hurt. But this number dropping down, though, Kyle. LSU laying 2.5 here against UCLA.
I really want to take LSU in this game. It's just a difficult spot for LSU. You mentioned the hurricane. They have not had a normal week by any means. They go out here, play this game a long ways away from home. To me, this is a difficult spot for LSU, but I want to fade UCLA if I can. I'm still thinking about whether I'll bet this one. I'm not sure if I'll end up pulling the trigger, but I have a lean here to LSU. And I will tell you, I think that Dorian Thompson-Robinson is still a big question mark for UCLA. This is a guy that last year his average depth of target was 7.5 yards per pass. So he doesn't throw the ball downfield, and a turnover worthy play on 5.6% of plays, according to PFF. I will tell you that that's a really high turnover margin, a turnover number based on so many short passes. I think that Dorian Thompson-Robinson's questionable decision making really worries me in big games. I think the UCLA offensive line is good. They're going to be pretty run heavy this year. To be honest, I mean, watching as much as I did of that first game, Dorian Thompson-Robinson didn't play very well in the first game. It was more about the rest of UCLA playing well. The defense played tremendous. I lean to the under in this game. This game has been bet under already. I know there were 68s earlier in the week, 67. Now we're down to 65. I think that's a sharp play there. But I will say the tempo of this game is concerning to bet an under, just because both teams will be snapping the ball quickly. They do have obviously a bunch of speed on offense. And I don't know, I'd be curious to get your thoughts on this, but I'm not sure, is the jury still out on Ed Orgeron? Because we know he won a national title, but Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase aren't walking through the door. Burrow was tremendous in this offense. They obviously had a different offensive coordinator. The upside for LSU is extremely high. I don't know that I trust Orgeron as much as some of these other top coaches. Having said that, Chip Kelly's team is a team that I'd rather fade than bet on. So I'm kind of curious to your thoughts about Orgeron at this point.
You know what it is, Kyle, that I think that Orgeron 2 years ago, he had just a boatload of talent, like you mentioned with Burrow, who was at Ohio State, and then transfer LSU, who people did not have as a Heisman Trophy candidate to start the season. I don't think people had that. And then he blew up, had incredible numbers. He had Justin Jefferson, he had Jamar Chase, he had all the guys defensively. It was just a loaded team. But then last year, losing Burrow, losing Jamar Chase to the opt-out, Jefferson goes to the NFL. He's a stud. That now all of a sudden, I feel like LSU, they played that opener against Mississippi State, and they just were flat. And if you just have the Florida game at the end of the season where there were like 4 touchdown dogs in Gainesville and won that game, they just didn't look good the whole season. And I feel like they went from one extreme to another, that he was so totally loaded. And then last year, his team just really wasn't that good, but it really wasn't his fault because of all the opt-outs. So I feel like, to answer your question, he's just like in the middle. He's just a guy that's going to be an 8-4 coach that will be in an Outback Bowl, but he's not a national championship coach, but it didn't look as bad as it was last year.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that LSU has more talent than they had last year, so I think there's some upside with this team. If they bring it together, the chemistry is good and the coaching is good. I think they're certainly possible that they could have a really good season. I think LSU's ceiling is higher than UCLA's, so I do lean LSU in this game. Like I said, I don't trust DTR at quarterback for UCLA. And I'm not sure, I know that people saw that game last week and UCLA looked great, but as you said, this is a really big step up in class.
Now, the other Louisiana team that we'll keep an eye on this weekend, the Ragin' Cajuns, who, again, one of the top teams in the Sun Belt, and they're going to Texas. I mean, you got a lot of storylines here, Kyle, with, last night we saw Appalachian State cruise past East Carolina. I know East Carolina came back a little bit in that game. Coastal rolled in their first game. So now it's Louisiana's turn, and they'll have the toughest test of these three, playing at Texas, where Steve Sarkisian is making his debut. There's a new quarterback, a lot of pressure on the Longhorns this year. But Texas, though, this number is down to 9 now. What do you think about this game in Austin?
So this is a fascinating game, because Napier is an excellent coach for Louisiana. I think he's done a tremendous job with that program. And also their talent is very good for a Sun Belt team. I think they're the most talented team in the Sun Belt. Having said that, Texas has all kinds of talent. This is a Texas team that if you look at, the recruits, if you look at their talent across the board, they're so much better than Louisiana. It really would worry me to take Louisiana at this kind of number at this point. I know Louisiana went to Iowa State and beat Iowa State last year. If you go back and look at that game, I do want to caution everybody, Louisiana by the box score really shouldn't have even necessarily won that game. There were some major special teams problems for Iowa State in that game. I would think that Texas can move the ball here. Louisiana has a good defense, so I think they'll slow them down some. But Texas, Bijan Robinson is tremendous. I think he'll be extremely good this season. Louisiana on the other side, they lose a couple running backs. They have a good offensive line. I think Texas's defense is going to be better than they have been. I tend to think this total's a bit high, if anything. So I tend to like the under in this game. Louisiana +9 is not enough for me to be taking a team like Louisiana against Texas. I certainly lean toward the Longhorns here with a big talent gap. If you think they're going to get pretty good quarterback play there from Card, like I said, I think Robinson's tremendous. So very interested in this game. I lean Texas and I lean the under here.
Yeah, that game against Iowa State last year, Kyle, didn't they have a punt return or another maybe defensive touchdown? But you're right that it was like Iowa State had a ridiculous yardage advantage, but when you score on special teams, that kind of cancels it out. It's like, okay, well, we're getting these points, but people remember that. And I think Louisiana, if not mistaken, was almost a 2-touchdown dog in that game against Iowa State. Now you're getting 9. And again, I think the other question too is the quarterback situation with Texas to see what they're going to throw out.
Yeah, I think Texas has multiple solid quarterbacks. We just haven't really seen them play very much. They're highly touted, certainly. We know they have a great running back. They have a good offensive line. And I think Sarkisian should do well here. He has a really good offensive mind. I think I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt that he's going to do a good job at Texas. Tom Herman, questionable job there. Great as an underdog, not good as a favorite. To me, I could only lay the points here with Texas, thinking there's just a pretty big talent disadvantage for Louisiana. And, as a bettor looking forward too, I like to do this because, I kind of hope Louisiana loses this game and doesn't look good so that we can come back and bet on them in the future, because I think they will have a very successful season. And if they get blown out in a game like this, it could provide some value in the future.
Now another Sun Belt team in action, not Army, but Georgia State hosting Army. And Georgia State, a short favorite here against Army. And I see your hat there, Kyle. So just trying to figure out what side you're on, and it's a total of 49.
Yeah, there's a reason I wore the Army hat today. This is probably my favorite one that we're going to talk about as far as a bet. This is a clash of styles. Army was 125th in tempo last year. Georgia State was 15th. So we have one team that wants to be really slow and plodding. The other team wants to play really quick. I wanted to point out that some people think triple option teams are just fades when the opposition has a ton of time to prepare. Monken is a great coach. His teams are 8-3 against the spread in game 1 of the season here in his 11 games. Niumatalolo 7-5 ATS at Navy too. So that's kind of everybody just assumes that you should bet against a team like a triple option team in that first game because people had all off season to prepare. If you'd been doing that, you've been losing quite a bit of money. Most of Army's covers in those 8-3 in that 8-3 ATS span have not been close either. So they've been very, very good at the beginning of the season. Georgia State's strength has been on the defensive line, but I wanted to caution everybody here. They did allow 6.3 yards per carry against Georgia Southern last year. Georgia Southern's a triple option team too. Triple option defense is very unique. So you could be good against the run, against the normal running team, but not be good against a triple option. Army was 10th in special teams play according to S&P Plus last year. Georgia State was 106, so a really big edge there. We know how many of these games can come down to special teams at the end of the game. I like Army in this game. I think Army +2 is a solid play. You could also take the money line there, get a small plus money on the money line. I think that Monken's team will be really ready to play in this game. Georgia State, a quality team from the Sun Belt, but not a team that is as disciplined as Army. Army knows what they're good at. They have multiple good running backs, a good quarterback for the system, and their defense has gradually gotten better here. I think this is a good spot for Army, and this is my favorite one we've talked about as far as betting value.
Now, the final game we'll look at, Kyle, Penn State and Wisconsin meeting in Madison. We're seeing a lot of these Big Ten matchups in week 1. Ohio State, Minnesota last night. You have Northwestern, Michigan State tonight. You have Indiana, Iowa also tomorrow, but Penn State, Wisconsin in Madison, and Penn State got off to that terrible start last year. They played better towards the end. Wisconsin dealt with COVID stuff on both sides from them and from opponents. And we know that was an issue in the Big Ten last year, but we know Wisconsin still, it's a tough place to play at Camp Randall. But for James Franklin, we'll see if he can put some kind of consistency together with Sean Clifford as his quarterback this year.
Yeah, this is a tough game. I will say, James Franklin's a guy that I think can be a bit frustrating. I'll be honest and say he's not my favorite of coaches. And, it's just the inconsistency. Sometimes he'll go for it on fourth down from his own end, and it looks like a questionable call. And other times he'll punt from the other team's 35-yard line. And it's just, he's hard to get a read on for me. I think his team loses some games based on his questionable decision-making. Wisconsin, to me, I know more what I'm going to get from them. The problem is you're laying 5.5 points against a Penn State team that is very talented, supremely talented. Penn State, two really good running backs. I think the best tailback tandem in the Big Ten, Kane and Lee. I think Penn State at quarterback, Clifford, I think Clifford is somewhat limited. We know he can scramble around and make plays, and, he's pretty good with his legs. I don't trust him that much to consistently be good passing. He doesn't have great weapons around him this year. On the other side, Graham Mertz. I think Graham Mertz will be better for Wisconsin this year. We saw him be excellent against Illinois to start the year last year, and then they had some really questionable games from him. He was a highly touted recruit. I think Mertz is going to be very good this year. Jalen Berger, a good running back there for Wisconsin as well. They're very deep at running back, as they usually are. To me, I trust Wisconsin more than I trust Penn State. 5.5 is not my favorite as far as laying that many points against a really talented Penn State team. I think both teams run the ball a lot here. Who can stop the run? I think that's going to be the big key to this game. The Penn State defensive line is down a bit from where they were a few years ago. I think Wisconsin can have some success running. I lean Wisconsin. I don't love laying 5.5 points. Also lean to the under here. I think there's going to be a lot of running clock because both teams are going to be trying to run the football instead of throw it. So 50 is a bit high for me. I think Wisconsin wins this game. Like I said, the point spread is getting a little bit up there at 5.5. This has been bet up. So lean Wisconsin, lean the under. Really looking forward to watching this game as well. We have some great games this weekend.
Yeah, and which is really different, Kyle, from what we've seen in years past, where Alabama's playing, whoever out of, a FCS school, or, I'm not going to just say that because a lot of teams do that. And yeah, later in the year they may play them, but at least now out of the gate, we get really good matchups, and these conferences are playing their games early too. Before we let you go, any baseball thoughts for tonight? Anything you're looking at? And understandably, that's kind of on the back burner with college football, with NFL starting, but anything you like in baseball?
Yeah, I'll pull up the board here and just talk about a couple. I think that in Colorado tonight, you have Ynoa against Senzatella. I see this total has been bet down some. I certainly lean to the under here in this game at Coors Field. Senzatella has actually been better at Coors Field than he's been on the road, which you don't see that very often from a Colorado pitcher, obviously. I also lean toward taking Colorado here at home. We've seen the drastic splits between Colorado on the road versus at home. I don't have the number in front of me right now, but I know that their road record is probably the worst, just about of anybody in baseball. And yet at home, they've been tremendous. I don't think you see this kind of disparity in any other year. This is just drastic. Plus 125 on the Braves, or on the Rockies against the Braves here. Certainly lean that way. I like the under some as well. I know it's Coors Field. It's not really hot there, though. The ball shouldn't be carrying as well as sometimes. So, to me, this is a game that's pretty interesting as far as value, because Senzatella has been good at home. Colorado has been really good at home, getting a plus money price, and you got a pretty high total as well.
And by the way, Colorado 43-23 at Coors Field this year, and they came back with 3-0 deficit last night. Blackman hit the grand slam, but then Atlanta ended up winning. But the road record, Kyle, 18-50 for the Rockies, which you say, not that if you have a winning record on the road, if you have won 10 more games and you're still 28-40, maybe you're in that playoff mix of the National League.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine. I mean, you see their road record and you think they're just a lowly team that has no chance, and then they keep winning these games at home against teams that are far better than them. So I understand the Braves being a favorite here. I just think the price is a bit too big. I also like the under in that one. So that's one that I like. I will say I'm also starting to get interested about the NL East. I think the Phillies making a run here is interesting. The Mets have obviously fallen out, but the Braves, we were just talking about the Braves. Now the Phillies on a run. The Phillies play a pretty weak schedule the rest of the way. So I think this could be a pretty interesting NL East here the rest of the way.
I feel like the National League East, the NFC East, the NFL like mirror each other. Like these teams just like knock each other down, and whoever gets up last is the one that wins it. So we'll see how that ends up. Kyle Hunter, you could find his picks at VegasInsider.com. Also follow him on Twitter at Kyle Hunter Picks. Kyle, thank you so much for joining us. We'll talk to you again soon.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, there is Kyle Hunter, and really good college football information from Kyle, and big totals guy in college football. So check out his picks at VegasInsider.com. Let's take a look now at baseball for today and tonight. And first, we'll begin with a monster matchup at Wrigley Field. It's the Pirates and the Cubs. And if you saw this game last night, and I get it. I get people were watching the Boise State UCF game. Boise State up 21-0 out of the gate. UCF came back. Dylan Gabriel had that terrible pick six that he threw. But you're probably watching that. You're watching Ohio State, Minnesota, maybe some of the other college games. So you probably didn't catch this game at Wrigley Field, which I understand. But the Pirates scored 3 runs in the top of the first inning, and Mitch Keller was tremendous. Then Chad Kuhl came in later in relief and got shelled, and the Cubs came back and won 5-3. So Chicago, all of a sudden now, the Cubs have won 4 or 5 and 3 straight. So they won 6-5 last night. I said 5-3, 6-5. They had a 5-3 lead. And then the Pirates came back and tied. That's why I went to bed, so I just assumed it was the final. But the Pirates got 2 in the top of the ninth, and then the Cubs won in 11 innings, 6-5. So that game went over the total of 8 last night. It was a 3-0 game for a very long time. So the Cubs, who are playing a little bit better right now, a little bit of confidence, not a lot, but a little bit, they send out Alec Mills to the mound this afternoon for a day game at Wrigley. And Mills... See, this guy can do this. That he threw a no-hitter against the Brewers last year, was 2 outs from a complete game shutout against the White Sox his last time out, went 8 1/3, gave up 4 hits, a 7-0 victory as a plus 270 underdog. But yet he's had other times, his previous start against the Royals, he was a short favorite, 12 hits, 7 earned runs. You kind of wonder which guy are you getting. But Mills, for the most part, he'll allow 3 earned runs or less in a lot of his starts. But now you wonder if you jump off the wagon with him, but that means you have to jump on the Pirates wagon, which I don't really think is viable at this point, or at least as a short dog like this. I mean, you really got to get the Pirates at a heavier price. But Steven Brault counters for Pittsburgh, the left-hander, and the Pirates are 0-5 in his 5 starts this season, 4-1 to the under. Gave up 7 earned runs last time out against the Cardinals. So he's been pretty terrible. Now let's look at the night action, and the Mets out of New York, they go to Washington. They just took 3 from Miami. So New York within a game of 500. Congratulations to them. I mean, they've been absolutely awful, but they've won 4 in a row. So the Mets now, actually now it's 5 in a row, excuse me. So the Mets play with some momentum, and they head to D.C. Nationals have no momentum. They blew a 6-0 lead to the Phillies yesterday. They've now lost 5 straight. And we know the Nationals are cooked at this point. But it's a pair of lefties on the mound, Rich Hill and Sean Nolan. And for Rich Hill, 6-6 record, 4.11 ERA. He's winless his last 3 starts. Last time out against the Nationals, laying 185, 2-1 defeat, 5 innings, 8 strikeouts, 2 earned runs. So he pitched well, but the Mets lost, and now he's a much shorter favorite today against Washington. And in the 2 starts that he's faced the Nationals, it's coming over to the Mets, 5 earned runs and 8 innings of work, so it's not great. Sean Nolan, 0-2 record, 6.57 ERA. He gave up 2 earned runs, struck out 6 and 5 1/3 against the Mets last time he faced them. And he's seen the Mets twice so far. He's given up 6 earned runs in 8.1 innings of work. So, yeah, both these guys don't have good numbers against their opponent, which means it'll probably be a 1-0 game tonight. The Phillies and the Marlins from Miami, and as Kyle mentioned, Philadelphia, spastic Philadelphia, they've caught fire, and they won 8 straight. Then they fell apart. They got swept at Arizona, remember? But now they've come all the way back, and they've won 6 in a row. But the key is the key with the Philadelphia Phillies is that they're playing teams they should be beating. They lost the opener to Arizona. They've won 3, or they beat Arizona 3 straight, scored 7 runs in each of those games. Philadelphia, listen to this. This is unbelievable. Against Washington, they were down 6-0 yesterday. They came back and won 7-6. Here's their last 7 games and how many runs they've scored. 7-12, 7-7, 7-7-7. They've scored 7 runs or more now in 7 consecutive games, which is pretty amazing for the Phillies. They go to Miami, face the Marlins tonight. Kyle Gibson, 10-5 on the season. He's pitched better for the Phillies since coming over from Texas. He had 2 good starts, 2 not-so-great starts, and then 2 good starts. You wonder which Gibson you're going to get tonight. 14 innings, 1 earned run his last 2 outings against San Diego and Arizona. So Gibson has pitched better. Jesus Luzardo, he counters for Miami. He was terrible for a while. He came over in the Starling Marte trade from Oakland. And Luzardo, he is from South Florida, went to high school in South Florida, and he, in his first start against the Mets, 5 innings, 3 earned runs. He benefited from a Marlins grand slam early on in that game. Marlins beat the Mets 6-3. And then his next 4 starts, he allowed 7, 5, 4, and 5. But then against the Reds his last time out, 6 scoreless, 1 hit, 2-1 victory over the Reds, 175 underdog. So he pitched better in the last game. But the Marlins come in. They've dropped 3 in a row. They lost all 3 to New York. They had the one continuation game that was suspended after like 9 pitches from earlier in the year, and they blew a 5-1 lead in the 9th of that game, and they lost the final 2 to the Mets. So they're 10-6 for the last 16 at home. So you'd think the Marlins would bounce back here. The Cardinals and the Brewers from Milwaukee, and it's actually a pretty good matchup because anytime these teams get together, it's always fun. Adam Wainwright and Freddie Peralta on the mound. And St. Louis, who went through that stretch of playing really bad teams, and they had 2 bad losses at PNC Park. They blew, a 7-1 lead in one of those games to the Pirates. They had the 3-1 lead in the 9th. They gave up the walk-off homer this past Sunday. But then they took 2 of 3 at Cincinnati. So, that's pretty good. Now the Brewers are back home after a 7-game road trip. They dropped 2 of 3 at Minnesota, but won 3 of 4 at San Francisco. So at least they got some momentum. I know they lost yesterday, but they had won 4 straight before yesterday's loss. Now they get St. Louis, and these teams just met at Busch Stadium in August, and Milwaukee won 2 of 3. And the Brewers in that second game, I remember they were down, and they came back and won that in extra innings. But in the third game, Milwaukee was up 4-1, and St. Louis came back and won. So Adam Wainwright, who is finding the fountain of youth somehow, Wainwright, in 3 of his last 4 starts, he hasn't allowed a run. In the 1 start he did allow a run, he gave up 2, and that was in a 2-0 defeat to Corbin Burns and the Brewers. Now, on the flip side, I will say this. The 3 starts he didn't allow a run, all against Pittsburgh. So Wainwright owns the Pirates, and he dominated them in a span of in a 3-start span in August. Now, Wainwright against Milwaukee, 2 earned runs last time he faced them, and went 5 innings, gave him an earned run back in April, a 3-1 victory over Milwaukee. So he's pitched well against them. Freddie Peralta counters for the Brewers tonight, and Peralta, he is actually back on the mound. He was out for a little bit. August 18th, last time he started, so it's been a few weeks. He only went 2 innings against the Cardinals in a 6-4 victory, and that was the game that St. Louis was up. They were in control. Milwaukee tied it late and then won in extras. But Peralta, still really good numbers on the season, 2.45 ERA. And the Brewers have won his last 3 home starts. And his home number is 4-1 record, 2.00 ERA. So difficult matchup just because you wonder with Wainwright if he's still going to pitch well against a team like Milwaukee, which he has, but also his numbers have looked good recently because he's faced the Pirates a lot. Kyle hit on this game, the Braves and the Rockies, and we'll talk a little bit more about it. So last night, Atlanta, who came in off of the 3-game sweep at the hands of the Dodgers this past weekend, or earlier in the week, I should say, they had won 16 of 19 on the road prior to losing the 3 to the Dodgers, to Scherzer, Urias, and Walker Buehler. So you're facing 3 studs in the mound in that series. And look, the Braves had Charlie Morton going. They had Max Fried going. I mean, they had some of their better pitchers, and even Drew Smyly, who was on a roll, and they could not beat the Dodgers. Okay, so they go to Colorado, who was one of the better home teams in baseball. Terrible road team, but a great home team. And the Braves jumped out to a 3-0 lead last night. Rockies came back. Charlie Blackmon hit a grand slam, and the Rockies took a 5-3 lead. So all of a sudden it flipped 5-3. I had the Braves last night in that game, and I really felt like in that situation, because the Rockies didn't have Marquez on the mound or have one of their better pitchers, that Atlanta still had a chance to win. And after, this was actually a really tough total loss. Now, Atlanta won 6-5. The total closed at 13. Atlanta led 6-5 going to the bottom of the 5th inning. No runs in the 6th, no runs in the 7th, no runs in the 8th, no runs in the 9th. 4 scoreless innings, actually 4.5 because they didn't score in the 5th. 4.5 scoreless innings. You needed 2 for a push. I think it was at 12.5, then move up to 13. 2 for a push, 3 for a win at Coors, and you couldn't get it. But the Braves end up a much-needed victory over the Rockies last night, 6-5. So now it is Huascar Ynoa, who pitched really well to start the season before he broke his hand punching a bench in Milwaukee. That was back in May. There's 3 starts since. Braves are 1-2. The 2 losses came to the Giants and Yankees. Gave up 5 earned runs in those 2 outings. But Ynoa is still a pretty good pitcher. And he goes against Antonio Senzatella. 3-9 record this year. But he's much better at home than on the road. Senzatella, when he takes the mound at Coors Field this year, the Rockies, this is amazing. They've won his last 6 starts. So that's a pretty good number there. And Senzatella, out of those 6 starts, he was a dog 5 times. So maybe the Rockies are worth a look, and they continue that series with the Braves at Coors Field. Now you got the 2 top teams in the National League West, the Dodgers and the Giants, and they're tied 85 and 49 apiece. So obviously a big series in San Francisco this weekend. Giants got that much-needed win over the Brewers yesterday, and it's David Price and Anthony DeSclafani on the mound, a couple former SEC pitchers, Price from Vanderbilt and DeSclafani from Florida. But this is obvious, I mean, huge for so many reasons, because the key is you can only have one division champion. So the winner, not tonight or this weekend, but the winner of the division, you don't have to worry about that 1-game playoff in the wild card. And even though LA can throw out Max Scherzer or Walker Buehler in that wild card game, you don't want to risk being in a 1-game playoff against anybody. You don't. So for the Dodgers, they would like to, I know they're the champions and all that, but they would like to avoid that game. So it's San Francisco. And the Giants, who have really built up their credentials this year, they've been great. They've been the biggest surprise in baseball, but they do not want to be relegated to the wild card game. Does that mean they can't win the World Series? No, but you'd rather have the cushion of the best of five, where if you lose your first game of the best of five, you're still alive for a game two. So Dodgers, Giants, very big game, very big series in San Francisco. And look, LA, they were lurking in the weeds. They've won 7 of 9. San Francisco, on the flip side, they've lost 5 of 7. And in some of those games, they could not score. 4 of those losses, they scored 2 or less. So now you go with David Price tonight, who, look, he's not the David Price of old. Like, he's not Cy Young David Price. He's not the guy that, I mean, back as, obviously his Tampa Bay days. I mean, think about this for a second. David Price won 20 games in 2012. How long ago was 2012? I mean, sometimes we don't realize how long ago it is. He won 16 games for the Red Sox back in 18. And he wasn't great in 19, and then he got traded to the Dodgers and the Mookie Betts deal. But David Price is not really going far in these games. The Dodgers may win these games, but he's not going very far. So Anthony DeSclafani, he has been the medicine for the Dodgers whenever he takes the mound, because DeSclafani, it's pretty amazing. Against LA this year, I got to go over these numbers. He's faced them 6 times already, 6 starts against the LA Dodgers. And in those games, he's actually gone 3-3. But the 2 games in San Francisco, he's been absolutely shelled. 10 earned runs in less than 3 innings back on May 23rd, 11-5 loss to LA. And 4 earned runs, less than 3 innings, 8-0 loss to LA on July 28th. So his 2 home starts against the Dodgers, he has been racked at Oracle Park. And he's a short dog tonight against the Dodgers, who have seen him a lot this year. All right, let's run through the American League now. Orioles and the Yankees, they meet up from the Bronx. And, of course, Baltimore is terrible. They're 50 games below 500. They have 41 wins. They're 50 games below 500. The Yankees back at home, where New York went on that 13-game winning streak, then lost 4 straight to Oakland and the Angels, but then won the finale with Garrett Cole, who's getting himself back in the Cy Young conversation in the American League now that he's back. But the Yankees, though, they get Baltimore tonight, and Baltimore, we know how bad they are. But recently, the Orioles, they did win at the Bronx in the opener of that series back in early August. Then the Yankees pounded them in the final 2 games. Baltimore has a few wins against the Yankees this year. It's not crazy. But tonight, though, it's a pair of lefties, John Means and Nestor Cortez on the mound. And for Means, remember he had that no-hitter at Seattle way back when? That's how long ago it feels. Means is not a bad pitcher, 3.46 ERA, but the Orioles are winless in his last 5 starts. And he's got a 2.39 ERA away from Camden Yards. He's Means, Mancini, Cedric Mullins, Mountcastle, pretty much anybody with an M on that team, a last name with an M. They got some bright spots on that team. They just have – there's no depth really, and the pitching staff past Means really isn't good. But looking at Means' numbers this year, he did cash in a no decision against the Yankees back in early April, a 4-3 win, plus 175. So he was all right in that game. And Cortez has been pretty decent for the Yankees, 2.77 ERA. The Yankees did beat the A's the A's beat the Yankees his last time out, 3-2. But he's been a really good under-pitcher, too, Cortez. That totals at 9 tonight. A's and the Blue Jays from Toronto tonight, and Oakland continues their East Coast swing. They pounded Detroit yesterday. Blue Jays, they won 4 or 5. A's have won 4 or 5 since that long losing streak. They had a lot of heartbreakers at home against the Yankees and the Giants and the Mariners. But Toronto, though, tonight, who's going? It's Manaea and Manoah on the mound. Sean Manaea and Alek Manoah. So for Sean Manaea, 3.97 ERA. He's winless his last 3 starts, all overs. And Alek Manoah, his last time out, no, that wasn't right. Well, 2 starts ago was against the White Sox, last time against the Tigers. He is, Manoah had 1 bad start against Washington, but Toronto is 5-1 his last 6 starts. And at home, they have won his 4 starts since, I believe, well, at least 3 starts at Rogers Center. The other one against Tampa Bay, I think that was in Buffalo. But he's pitched well at home, though, for Toronto, and they have turned into a nice favorite against Oakland. Minnesota goes to Tampa Bay, and I feel like this is the fade Michael Wacha spot because Wacha was lit up by Minnesota last time he faced him. He's just not good anymore. He was good a while ago with the Cardinals. Now, Randy Dobnak is he's no great shakes either. But Minnesota, the one thing I'll give them is they were playing well for a bit. They just scored 1 run in 2 games against the Cubs as a favorite. Now you're getting them as a nice size underdog. That Minnesota could be worth a look here. They took 2 of 3 from Tampa Bay last month at Target Field. And you're catching the Rays here off back-to-back loss to the Boston, and people always play they're mad card, but they scored 2 runs the last 2 games. They did face Chris Sale and Eduardo Rodriguez. Now they face Dobnak tonight, so obviously drop down in who they face, but Michael Wacha isn't exactly an ace either. Speaking of the Red Sox, they get Cleveland again. They took 2 of 3 from the Indians last weekend at Progressive Field, and they blew the final game to Cleveland. The Indians, look, I've said this all year about them. Everyone's talked about San Francisco. Everyone's talked about, or a lot of people have noticed Seattle and what they've done. But the Indians, no Terry Francona. He left the team a while ago or resigned, whatever it was, took a leave, whatever title you want to put on it. Because he's got some health issues. But no Shane Bieber. And this is a team that's above 500. They're 3 above 500. They've been a very pleasant surprise. I don't think a lot of people have really kept an eye on. And they just swept Kansas City. They've won 4 in a row. Boston now, they've won 2 straight. Cal Quantrill is turning into a good young pitcher for the Indians. He came over from the Padres. Never really had the opportunity with the Padres. Was more of a bullpen guy. But he's been actually really good for Cleveland. And you look back at his last 10 starts, he's allowed 1 earned run or less 7 times. 7 of 10 times he's given up 1 earned run or less, which is amazing. He's had a couple of tough breaks as far as losing an extra innings to Boston last time. Cleveland's bullpen blew a lead to Oakland a few times ago. And Quantrill also on a 9-start understreak. So that's pretty impressive. And he faces Nathan Eovaldi tonight. Now, Eovaldi's been great at home. So that's why the Red Sox are a nice favorite. Eovaldi has given up, or he had an ERA of around 1 going into his last home start. So he's been really good at home. Or an ERA of 1 in like a 4-start stretch, not all season long. This one is really intriguing to me, the White Sox and the Royals from Kansas City, because the Royals just got swept by the Indians, and we know they're on the same level as the White Sox. But Kansas City's actually played well against Chicago. They've won 6 of 9, or 6 of the last 9 against the White Sox. Carlos Hernandez starts for the Royals tonight. He has owned the White Sox. He's given up 1 earned run in 11 innings against Chicago this season. There's no Tim Anderson in the lineup for the White Sox. He's hurt. And Dallas Keuchel's been terrible. He got lit up for 7 earned runs in 1 inning of work against the Cubs his last time out, but the White Sox came back and won 17-13, so Keuchel didn't get the loss. But Keuchel just isn't the pitcher he used to be. He's not a Cy Young type pitcher anymore. But Hernandez, he's turned into a pretty decent option for the Royals, and I get that the 2 starts against Chicago, he was plus 245 and plus 160. Now you're getting him at plus 115. But there's something he's done to shut down the White Sox. Kansas City is 6-1 his last 7 starts. The 1 loss came to the Yankees in extra innings. So Hernandez has given Kansas City a chance to win every time he goes out there. And that's more to say about some of the other young guys they have in their rotation. But the White Sox, they've won a few in a row. They beat the Pirates and the Cubs, so they're facing not a tough schedule right now. But I think the Royals should have some confidence tonight with Hernandez going even off the sweep. Let's go to the Rangers and the Angels out in Anaheim. And Shohei Ohtani is back on the mound tonight. He missed his last start. He got hit on the wrist a few games ago. I mean, guy pitches, he hits, he does everything to win the MVP. But Joe Madden decided to push his start back a few days. Now he faces Texas, who he's had a lot of success with this year, but he's still a heavy favorite. 8-1 record, 3.0 ERA. Glenn Otto starts for Texas. He was all right, actually, his last start against Houston. Texas has won 3 of 4, but got awful on the road, 16-49. If it wasn't for Colorado, Texas would be the worst road team in baseball. And this is the funny thing with the Angels, that they have won 3 of 4 against the Padres and Yankees. They dominated teams below 500, but now they face a team, or they played well. Okay, let me start over. They had a long stretch where they played well against teams below 500. Then they lost a few to the Orioles. Then they played well against teams above 500, which they weren't playing well against prior. So now you're getting another below 500 team. You kind of wonder if it shifts back to the Angels struggling against a team like Texas, who has played a little better of late. You know, they beat Houston in a blowout on Sunday. They beat the Rockies a few times. They built a 5-0 lead over the Rockies on Wednesday, before losing 9-5. So Texas is they're playing a little better. We know they're not very good, but I don't know how you lay $2 with the Angels. I mean, that line is dropping a little bit, but I don't know how you lay it with them. The Tigers and the Reds, they hook up from Cincinnati as part of the 3 interleague games tonight. And Detroit is a nice underdog tonight. So they face this Cincinnati team who's cleaned up against really bad teams at home. And I know they just faced the Cardinals, and they lost 2 of 3. But they're also a team that swept the Pirates at home. They swept the Marlins at home. They just struggled against the Cubs. They lost 2 to them. But obviously a very big series for the Reds, because they're them and the Padres, Cardinals hanging around. Now the Phillies are back in the race. I mean, that wild card race is getting interesting. And Cincinnati can't afford to lose games to a team like Detroit. They just can't do it. And tonight it is Tyler Alexander against Victor Gutierrez. And Gutierrez has had his struggles at home, or Vladimir Gutierrez, excuse me. Vladimir Gutierrez, who is seeking his 10th win of the season, but he just has a 4.65 ERA at home. He pitched well in his last home start, actually his last 2 home starts, but he went on a stretch where he wasn't good at home. Now, look, he's faced the Marlins a few times, the Cubs. He's a good young pitcher for the Reds. He is, but that's a heavy number tonight. I know Detroit's offense has been terrible. I don't really like that game. The Mariners and the Diamondbacks and Seattle will throw out Tyler Anderson tonight, the former Pirate. He's going against Madison Bumgarner, the former Giant. And Madison Bumgarner, his last 2 starts, he's actually struggled a bit for the Diamondbacks. He went on a really good run after the All-Star break, where he allowed 2 earned runs or less in 7 straight starts. But his last 2 outings against Pittsburgh and Philadelphia on the road, 9 earned runs in 11 innings of work. But the Diamondbacks are 4-0 in his last 4 home starts. Now they're a short dog tonight against Seattle, and the Mariners off that actually back-to-back shutouts over the Astros, 4-0 and 1-0. They've won 3 of 4. They have 5 straight unders now. And Anderson, who so far since going to the Mariners from the Pirates, he's had decent numbers. Gets about 4 strikeouts a game. He did pick up a loss his last time out against Kansas City, went 7 innings, his longest stretch with the Mariners, 3 earned runs. Anderson's not a bad pitcher. I mean, Bumgarner, yes, the Diamondbacks should be an underdog here just because, Seattle's a better team than them. But Arizona did beat San Diego in their last game at home, 8-3. And speaking of the Padres, they face the Astros in a pretty nice matchup tonight out in San Diego at Petco Park. Jose Urquidy and Jake Arrieta. We'll see what Jake Arrieta has got left in the old tank, because he has been terrible since he went to the Padres. I mean, he was terrible with the Cubs earlier in the year. And look, a lot of these guys, Jake Arrieta, Dallas Keuchel, a lot of these former Cy Young winners, time catches up with them. And there's no shame in that. They were good pitchers at one time, but time catches up with them. Arrieta's 5-12 in the season, 7.13 ERA. He's winless his last 9 appearances on the mound. And his one start against Colorado, coming over from San Diego after he got let go by the Cubs, 5 earned runs, 3 1/3 innings, 7-5 defeat to the Rockies. Now he faces the Astros, who were shut out in the last 2 games, as I mentioned, by Seattle. So Jose Urquidy, who was actually a pretty strong pitcher last year for the Astros, 6-3 record, 3.38 ERA, first start he's making since late June. And Urquidy, he's a guy who can go 7 innings easily. And Houston favored here. I got to believe the Astros bounce back tonight against the Padres. San Diego's been, obviously very good at home, but Houston, they've had some offensive woes. They lose the DH tonight going to National League Park, but Urquidy's pretty strong, and Arrieta, I don't know how you have faith in him. I really don't know how you do that. So that's the look at Major League Baseball for tonight. And in case you missed any of the discussion today with Kyle Hunter talking college football, you can catch the replay of the Daily Insider on VegasInsider.com. You can find it on our homepage. We'll be running it throughout the day. Just find the Daily Insider, and also on our YouTube channel as well. And we'll have it there. Looking ahead to the college football for Saturday. We won't have a show Monday. It's Labor Day, so we'll be off on Monday, but we'll be back with you on Tuesday to break down the weekend in college football and also look ahead to week 1 in the NFL. Less than a week away, Cowboys, Buccaneers in Tampa, and then we'll have a full slate for week 1 in the NFL. So looking forward to that. It's going to be very busy, but we are very excited about all of it, all the football coming, all of it. And we have the baseball, so it's a very exciting time for us right now. I am Kevin Rogers. Thanks a lot for watching today's edition of the Daily Insider right here on VegasInsider.com.